Hi, this is Stevie. I'm going to show you how you can get your watercolor paintings to have a looser look. Here I'm going to paint a little flower, and I'm just going to start with some yellow in the center to create the center of the flower so I can give it some direction. Then once I do that, I'm going to flick some water onto that piece of paper. Notice that I don't cover the whole piece of paper with water, but it's just here and there, and the result is that you'll have some hard and soft edges. Here I'm just creating the direction of the flower with some of the pink paint and just working around the flower, and notice how soft the outer edges of that flower are. And that's one way to make it look loose. I can go back in and create some hard edges too, but right now I'm just wanting to get the shape of the flower in. So just continuing to work around, and then I'm really going to shape the flower when I add the green color to indicate some leaves or some foliage. First I'm adding a little more of the pink to the center of the flower to give the flower some depth. Now I'm working on the outer edges, and notice as I apply that green color, I mixed that with Prussian blue and quinacridone burnt orange. But as I apply that green color, in some areas it touches the petals and in some areas it doesn't. You'll notice there are some areas where you can see a little bit of white in between next to the petal. And I'm okay when it touches the petal. I like how it blends in with the flower, and it helps to create unity in the painting. But also notice that I leave some areas just white and I don't fill in everything around the flower. And in that bottom left corner, there's an area, a fairly large area, where I just left it white, and notice how that edge just gets lost when you do that. So I'm just working around. I put most of the color right up next to the petals, and then as I move to the outer edges of the painting, I rinse my brush and just use water to blend that color out. I don't want that solid color going way out to the edges of the painting. It's too distracting. And I really want to call attention to the petals, so the darker color that I have up closer to the petals, the more it will do that. So I'm just continuing to work around, and note that I leave white areas. It's not solid green all the way around the painting. Now I'm going back in and finding some areas that I want to add some darker paint to, some darker green paint. And it's because I want to call attention to the petals in that area. So where you add the darker paint, that's where the eye is going to go when someone looks at it. And you might have to go back and do that a couple of times because watercolor dries lighter. So sometimes I go back in 2 or 3 times to do that. And I'm just using my floppy dagger brush to create some foliage looking things or leaf looking background. And I'm getting some dark color right up next to that area that I just left white. And you'll notice how the edge of that petal is just lost. And you just leave it that way. And where the edges of the petals have run right into the green, those are also lost edges. But I also have some hard edges too. And look how nice it looks where I have left some white right next to the petal, between the petal and the greenery. It looks like a highlight on the petal. So that's a nice little trick too. So I'm just working around. This is just a really quick little painting, but it'll give you an idea of how you can do that. So you don't have to wet the entire piece of paper, but if you just flick some water on to give you something to work with, you can get some nice lost edges effects with that. So now I just want to add some directional lines on the petals. It can make it look like the petals are folding a little bit, but it also helps the viewer to see which way the petals are going. So I'm just adding those, and notice I lightly add the lines, and then I clean my brush again, get some water on it, and then just pull those out at the ends of the petals so they're not really harsh lines. It's a really light touch when I add that color. It helps to give a little shadow toward the center, gives more dimension to the painting. There I'm just separating petals by just adding a line there. And you don't overdo it, but just a few here and there. And then for the final thing, I can indicate some leaves with some negative painting by just using a little bit of the green color, shaping a leaf with it, blending out. When I apply that line, I go back and blend it out with water so it's not a hard line. But it's very subtle, but just a couple of those strokes makes it look like a leaf without adding a lot more color. I get in trouble when I paint leaves, so I really like this method. And just I brushed across it to soften it. So there you have it. There's your loose watercolor flower, and thanks for watching. If you have questions or comments, be sure to leave them below and I'll be happy to respond.